Amnesty International has criticized the West for turning a blind eye to human rights violations in Egypt. The rights group's Deputy Middle East and North Africa Director also slammed world leaders and the UN Human Rights Council for remaining silent on the detention of peaceful activists in the country. Hasiba Haji Shahrawi said Egypt's Western partners benefit from businesses and policing equipment that help with further human rights violations. The London-based rights watchdog says more than 41,000 people have been arrested or sentenced after unfair trials in Egypt. It added that the government of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi spares no efforts to crush all challenges to its authority. The statements come ahead of the second anniversary of the ouster of former President Mohamed Morsi on July the 3rd. Mohamed Shalabi, our correspondent, joins us now from the Egyptian capital, Cairo. Mohamed, Amnesty International had some harsh comments and statements regarding the rights violations in Egypt.
Yes, and the report was entitled "Generation Jail: Egypt's Youth Go from Protest to Prison." And the latest briefing by Amnesty International on the second anniversary of the toppling of Egypt's first democratically elected civilian president, Mohamed Morsi of the Brotherhood, arrived at a conclusion, quote, that the country has reverted to fully to being a police state, unquote. These are the words of Amnesty International. We heard, of course, criticism also directed to Western governments, and that's because we are seeing increased military and economic cooperation between the US and Europe and the Egyptian military-backed government, despite shy condemnations that come from Washington or Brussels regarding the human rights violations in Egypt and the Egyptian response that interference in internal affairs are unacceptable, and claims that the judiciary is independent here in Egypt. So you always have this game going back and forth whenever you have a trial for Morsi or mass trials involving Islamic extreme or liberal extreme anti-government protesters. But it is the same scenario, shy condemnations, and then from the West, and then a response from Egypt that it rejects interference in its internal affairs, but business goes on as usual. You know, Bardia, Egyptian NGOs have also issued a barrage of reports on the occasion of the conclusion of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi's first year in power earlier this month. He has, of course, been the de facto ruler of the country since the overthrow of Morsi 2 years ago, having acted as the defense minister back then. You have the Egyptian Commission for Rights and Freedoms, the Association of Freedom of Thought and Expression, and the Nadim Center for Rehabilitation of Victims of Violence and Torture also issued a number of reports that focused on human rights violations in Egypt, whether concerning the unlawful killings inside detention facilities, also violations against university students or against the press here in Egypt. And they have all agreed that last year was the worst on record for human rights here in Egypt, Bardi.
Press TV's Mohamed Shalabi joining us from the Egyptian capital, Cairo.